Over the past couple of months, I've been working on a whole lot of projects. They should be flashing across the screen right now, and those are a whole bunch of reasons why you should subscribe to the channel. But videos take time that I like to spend programming, so that's one reason why I haven't actually been making as many videos as I could be. But there is another roadblock. You see, on this channel, I've been trying to improve my videos. Now, evidently, that hasn't exactly been working. As you can see, my first video is doing a whole lot better than my other ones. I think that's just something YouTube does because I've created other channels. And one of the ways that I've been trying to make my videos better has been by adding music. You'll notice that in my first video ever, I had no music. But I've been slowly trying to add it, especially in the past two videos. But there's a couple of problems with music on YouTube. First of all, copyright. As you can see, my two videos with music both violated copyright. And I will say I don't pay too much attention to whether or not my music is copyright free or not, but I try to get it from like Pixabay copyright free websites, and YouTube has some stuff. I try to like not just blatantly rip off music. That's a whole other thing. Another problem is that non-copyright music is cringe and usually not good, especially for YouTube. And then finally, whenever you find actually good songs, it gets kind of repetitive. So it's not that big of a problem, especially if you think music in the background of videos is not good. But it's a bit of annoyance for now, and potentially a problem in the future. So I think I might have a fix with infinite music. So basically a program that is going to be able to use my limited knowledge of how creating music works to just produce, pump out infinite music. And it's not going to be one of those big songs or anything. Like, it's just going to be simple background music, which honestly, a program for background music might actually be better than some of these copyright free songs that honestly are targeted a lot towards blogs, which I am not a blog. So the first step of this project was to find a library. Now, anything where you need a library, Python is the way to go. So that's absolutely the language I chose. And I did a little bit of research and I found that there's like one good library, musicpy, which was surprisingly relatively unknown, as in I didn't find any tutorials online for it, and I had to rely on documentation, which was great, by the way. musicpy documentation was amazing. Like, it did take some digging and some debugging to figure some stuff out, but the documentation was perfect. And I was able to figure out a whole lot because of it. And in the process of learning said library, I made a couple of files. You'll see test, which was a sample file that they gave to me. So I'm not sure if this is actually gonna work. It should, because their play function isn't working, so I have to make a custom play MIDI file or function, which you'll see in all the files that I do, that'll actually play it. But this is honestly a really good song, like, or not song, but like, you get it, music that they gave. So yeah, that's kind of vibey, and that just shows that you can do a lot of stuff with this, and it could be cool. I don't expect to make anything of this standard, but it's a good sign to see that this does have the versatility that will be needed in this project. So that's test.py. I really just used it to kind of see what you can make with this. And then the first file that I started on was perform.py, which originally was going to be my main file, but it got too messy. So here's the play MIDI function again. It basically just uses Pygame to actually play, since .play for some reason doesn't work. There's a whole lot of random functions, so random notes, random chords, random lengths, all sorts of stuff. And in this one, I do believe I already start dividing all of this into a double melody kind of, which I'll improve on using a bit more musical principles in the main function, but I do follow up with this using 2 musical tracks and actually 2 drum tracks. We can go into drums here because there ended up being I had to filter some stuff out because instruments are weird and they have like a list of a whole lot of instruments, but I can't just randomize instruments to find drums because then I might not get drums. So I had to create a list, and this uses a different method of making drums where you actually use letters to signify drums, and rest, which is important to use the rest. And I ended up actually, I think, straight up copying this to my actual end function, and the level of drums is basically you have completely random, and then you have one background drum that's constantly playing just to keep a sort of beat. Normally it would be a hi-hat, so I think I did end up filtering out. You see, these R's are the ones that might repeat, so these don't sound like cymbal, because I don't want cymbals banging in the background the entire time. So I chose some of the more background ones. I like the bass, the hi-hats, another bass, and those it keeps the beat not just totally random. With music, it can't be completely random, so it needs kind of this pattern to hold it down, and that's drums.py. And so now we've gone through drums.py, perform.py, and we can actually get into the main.py. So we use musicpy as musicpy.daw, which I'll explain later. We do use a CSV to keep track of naming. We use pygame and of course random. So you can see here we have the drums, which I just took from the drums.py, and we have the repetitive ones. So I just filter through index 0 through index 4 depending on what drums I want to use. Then we have a melody. So obviously I didn't type this out, okay? This uses some sort of basic DAW, and so I was able to use Copilot. Copilot gave me a list of all the melodic, quote-unquote, instruments, because there's 150. I didn't want to go through 150. And so yeah, that's not bad. I think I took some of them out because if it just wasn't vibing with me. And then we have ambience. So I will actually go back to perform.py, because perform.py does not do the musical part of everything, not drums, the same way that I chose to do it for main.py. I messed with this a whole lot. I did it in a whole lot of ways. I had one method whenever I was using this file to where I had one instrument playing and then 1/8 of a beat, and then the other instrument would play kind of as background. But that's not what I did for this. I did ambience and a melody. So we had the play from MIDI file, if you know what that is. We'll start off with the drums, I suppose. Another thing that was a bit hard with this project was trying to keep the drum, the melody, and the ambience loop the same length. So there were some things that I wanted to do that I couldn't because I wanted a little bit of pattern and everything to sync up. It can't be completely random once again. So we have repetitions, a duration, a loop. We have a gap function, which a gap is whether or not the background drums, like hi-hats, whether or not it plays in between the normal beat that we're going to have. And then background is whether or not we actually have those hi-hats. So this calculates the gap for us. We loop times equals 4 because that ends up, we need to do that just to keep it on par with the melodies and ambience. So we create music.drums, which a drum pattern ends up being a string in this. So we get random stuff from drums, create a pattern, create intervals, duration, which I think those end up being pretty similar, and a random volume as the default volume. And then we do the same thing in the background, except we divide the interval by mult, which allows us to get, more stuff, and we times it by mult. We times the pattern, so it's gonna be twice as long. Intervals twice as short. And then if background, we're just gonna combine both of them. Otherwise, we don't. It's probably a better way to do that. I use background in everything that I make, so it doesn't really matter. This is kind of out of order. We have a random beat function, which I like to keep everything on 1/2, 1/4, or 1/8. So that's why I have this explicit function. Random note. So it'll create the notes. It'll create the sharp, and a note is represented by the note and then the octave. Octave 3. Otherwise, it might be harsh to the ears. But I do kind of use other octaves later on. You'll see in the melodies and ambience, which we actually have. So I divided melody and ambience into its different functions. So the melody is going to take in the duration, a loop, and then a progression. This is what I kind of mean by I'm keeping everything with a little bit of pattern and musical. I'm using a little bit of my musical knowledge, which I don't have much. So a progression, simple 4 chords, if I'm using the term correctly. That's default. There's a progression generator. So it chooses a random bass octave, 3 to 5, because I'm fine with the melody being a bit more higher pitched. And then we create a random notes, random volume, add it all up. So like we generate the melody, and then we generate the changes in the progression depending on what it is, which the progression is going to be either -2 to 2. So it's not going to be too extreme, hopefully. I mean, it can get up to 7, which we don't like. So I'll tell y'all why that doesn't really matter later. Ambience is quite similar, except ambience is going to be the entire time. So the entire time a melody is playing, one ambience goes, and a melody is going to be four notes. So 4 melody notes play, and then while one ambience plays, and then they move up in the same progression, which I'll show you how that works later. Sum it all up, and then times it by the loop. So those are cool. And now we finally have the generate song function, which is right there. I'll just go over these two real quick. Random BPN, which is beats per minute, so how fast a song plays. We'll use that. You've seen random volume. If it's in the background, we want lower volume. Otherwise, we can go 3 to 5. Just more randomness. The actual song, it's going to need a duration of the main thing. How many drums are you going to want? Because the melody's fixed to 4. The ambience is fixed to 1-ish. How many loops do we do? 16. 16's perfect. That should get us some decently long background music and stuff. We generate a progression as a list of the random ints of -2 to 2 for underscore in range 4. So 4 random ints. How you go? I've never really seen. Think if it was anything like -3 to 3, that would be too extreme. So we'll keep it at that. We generate the melody. So random melody. We generate the ambience. You see some math in here, by the way, which is just me trying to keep the patterns there. And I added a whole bunch of inputs, which I probably didn't need to add, but they're just there. We do the random drums up here. So if you didn't see that, the progression, I like printing the progression just to see like what's happening. Okay, so then we get the results. So we have the melody, the ambience, and the drums. For the melody, we want a random instrument from melody. For ambience, we want a random instrument from the list ambience. Now drums, we don't do anything for because we use multiple instruments, so we just put a 1 here. We get a random BPN, and then channels, we have 0, 1, and 9. So these two are the first channels. 9 is actually a drums channel. So by specifying 9, it knows that drums are going to be the K and the H and all that stuff is going to be a drum, and it's going to be able to interpret it as multiple instruments and not just one. So the start times is 0, 0, 0 and return the result. And that is how you generate a song. So we have a tracker, CSV. That way the naming system, we don't have to do stuff because we are going to pump out songs with this. I'm going to show you how we do that. So we open a CSV, we get the number, which is just going to be, what name is it? So song blank. Then we write a number plus 1. So we generate a song, print it out, just debugging, I guess. This will play the sound for us, but we're going to have MP3s. We're going to go through all those and it should be easier that way. I actually had a bit of trouble with this, converting it to WAV. So not an MP3, MP4. You could convert it that way if you wanted to. It's not that hard. We actually need to create a DAW, and I had to download this file, which was kind of annoying, but it's whatever. And then I load the channels, I guess, with the DAW. And then I export the file. And now that we've gone through everything, we can see if we get some good background music, and maybe you've been listening to some of this background music the entire video. Python main.py. So we end up getting song 1. We're gonna put that in the background. Listen to this. Don't like it. Too fast. Actually, that's not bad. Another whistle. That's really high pitched. Okay, I like that. That one's chill. That's chill, and I like the kicks. I don't know what I think about the progression. It's a bit high pitched. So this one's chill. I like the chill ones. This one's dramatic. I don't know. You get a lot of violins. You've gotten a lot of violins. This one's another dramatic one. Alright. I will spare your ears. Some of these end up being pretty bad, but I think we've gotten a couple of decent ones. I like this one. This one was kind of chill. Because whenever it's background, you don't really need it to be a whole lot. It doesn't need to do much. It just needs to be there, keeping like a beat. So we just generated 10 songs in, I don't know, like 30 seconds, and we were able to judge which ones we like, which ones we don't. And it was really easy. I think I set the loop to 1, so if I wanted longer, I could set it to 16, and that would be a real background song. It would take a bit longer, obviously, but okay, it took a lot longer, but now we have 1 minute. I mean, this is free music, infinite music, so I think it's pretty cool. So I may use it, I may not. I may just stop using music altogether. I may start making tutorials so I don't have to use music. Let me know what you think in the comments. Which of the projects at the beginning of the video you want to have a video on, and I will see y'all in the next one.